Welcome to the Love Dog Podcast. I'm your co-host, Raina Butcher, here with our host, Dr. Sarah Hensley.
Hey, hey.
Hey. What's up, Doc?
Gosh.
How's your week?
Hectic as always.
Yeah.
With the kiddos. Everybody's got a different place to go, but it's good.
Good.
Blessed.
Good. Yeah, same. It's been a crazy week for me too. I say crazy, but not really crazy, just kind of like with the time change, I'm like in this weird funk.
Yeah.
I don't know. It like knocks off my circadian rhythm or something. I don't
Yeah.
know. It's weird. And then I just get in these really strange funks. I'll snap out of it though. Speaking of funks, episode 27, and we are going to cover a topic that I think a lot of people, based on your messages, are really, really curious about, which is we're just going to cover the anxious preoccupied.
Yeah, that attachment style. I don't talk about it as much because I just don't see it very much.
Yeah.
So many people come to me in coaching and say, I'm an anxious preoccupied. And then when I do an assessment, I'm like, you're a total fearful avoidant.
Yeah.
You're not an anxious preoccupied. I understand you feel very anxious right now because you're with a dismissive avoidant, and
Right.
the fearfuls will lean opposite of their partner. So if their partner's very avoidant, they're going to feel very anxious, and they're going to look a lot like an anxious preoccupied. But most people just do not recognize their avoidant side.
So
at all.
first, I think the best question, the first question is, so what's the biggest variable that really differentiates the two between anxious preoccupied and fearful avoidance?
Well, I think we have to start with childhood experiences for sure. Fearful avoidance is born out of childhood trauma that makes a young child stop trusting one or more of their parents. So they develop a betrayal wound.
Right.
The anxious preoccupied, in my practice, almost always reports that they had a very good, loving childhood. They can't really pinpoint one of their parents as dysfunctional, and they feel like they got emotional support. It was just there was something that made it inconsistent. So I see a lot of variables, like I had parents that worked a lot. So, and I was a latchkey kid. But when my parents were home, they were really attuned to me and really gave me a lot of love and affection and emotional support. Or, well, I had a lot of siblings, 5, 6, 7, kids in the family. Nobody had enough time to give the child enough one-on-one attunement. Or grandma got sick and she moved in with us, and so parents' attention was pulled away from child to the elderly parent. And so it's usually inconsistency and the love, affection, emotional attunement that drives the anxious preoccupied, because it's really intermittent reinforcement.
Right.
And we've talked about that before, but just to remind our audience, intermittent reinforcement is when somebody meets your needs and then withdraws them, meets your needs and then withdraws them. And anything that's inherently addicting and anxiety provoking usually has intermittent reinforcement. So gambling is intermittent reinforcement.
Right.
You bet your money you win, you feel great. You bet your money you lose, you feel awful. Right, making you anxious
and wanting
to go back to the table to bet again.
Right.
And that is essentially the experience of the anxious preoccupied person. Yes, they, most of them had a nuclear family growing up. They felt like parents were very, emotionally supportive, hugs, kisses, I love yous. But there was just too much inconsistency. Right. Just too much.
Yeah.
And that stinks, because we look as parents and we say we do the best we can, and man, I can't always be there for every moment my kid needs me.
Right.
And that isn't necessarily true in terms of what has to happen, but it's sort of, the research shows like it needs to be like 60% of the time, right, to create that secure attachment. Whereas for the anxious preoccupied person, it was probably more like 30, 40% of the time. Their parents nailed it, and then more absence than presence in that regard.
So do you ever see like the traumas with an anxious preoccupied, like you do the fearful avoidant?
Not big traumas.
Yeah.
Maybe some little T traumas, like my parents bickered, or, maybe I was bullied, or maybe we moved a lot.
Or they divorced really young before the child could even remember.
Yeah.
Maybe.
But I mean, the nervous system of the child remembers.
Yeah.
Like, dad's home every day and then he's not.
Right.
Like, where's dad?
Yeah.
So it's really interesting in attachment research. So many bad parenting ideas are born out of the idea that kids are so resilient and little kids don't remember stuff.
Yeah.
Listen, their nervous systems remember.
Yeah.
And I get a lot of people that come to me and go, oh, but I don't want to get a divorce because of the effect on my kids. And I'm like, I get that. Yeah, that's not ideal.
Right.
Right. Of course, your kids will have some effects from growing up in a divorced home, right? But those effects can be insanely minimized by good co-parenting.
I've said all of my adult life how I wished my parents would have divorced way earlier than they did.
Yes. I wish my parents would have divorced at all.
Yeah, because they did the best they could. But I think they did more damage that last 10 years of their marriage and staying married than if they would have just cut it, and then just moved on. Because those last 10 years were rough.
Right.
They were rough.
I am a very big proponent that a dysfunctional marriage is worse for a child's attachment development than a well-handled divorce and co-parenting situation.
Yeah.
So really, it's not even, the research shows it's not even about divorce that really makes or breaks someone's attachment. It's how the divorce is handled.
Yeah.
Are the parents fighting all the time? Are they putting the child in the middle? Are they parentifying the child? Are they, sending messages back and forth between the child and putting responsibilities on the child that they shouldn't have? That's really what parentification is. And we can have emotional parentification, which we've talked about, which is sort of like using your child as a therapist, which your mom did to you, right?
Yes.
And we've talked about that.
Yeah.
And my parents did. My entire childhood. Again, I love you, Mom. And it was more my dad.
Yeah.
Because my mom's more DA-like. My dad sort of used me as a therapist to complain about my mom. And that really strained my relationship with my father in later years because I just didn't want to hear him talk so much trash about my mom.
Right. Yeah.
I was just like, leave her alone.
Yeah. The same with my mom. It just made me resent her.
Yes.
And then it wasn't until I got older that I started to recognize, I just started to remove myself and understand where her pain came from. And then I was kind of able to understand it better. But in the midst of it, it was brutal.
Right.
And I didn't know how to cope with it. I went through, when my parents were going through that divorce, and I was the only one at home. I'm the baby of 4. And my mom was really using me as her confidant. And not really a confidant. Like, she was just unleashing. Like, she was just unleashing.
That's what my dad did.
Yeah. And it was always anger filled. And so it was scary, and so those younger years, like 17, 18, 19, I would just kind of sit back and take it and just try to be like this soundboard for her. But then once I got into like that 20, 21, 22, and she kept doing it, and she was still doing it even in my 30s, I was just like, enough. I can't take it anymore.
Yeah.
When are you going to stop?
Yeah. Yeah.
When are you going to stop?
Get your own therapist. Do not use your children.
Please not. Please
they
don't
want to know. They love both parents, and they should have the right to love both parents.
Well,
even if the other parent is a legitimate a-hole.
Right.
Like, just don't tell that. Let your kid make up their mind. They will find out who's the a-hole parent.
Yeah.
Later in life. They'll find out who's the a-hole parent.
My son is proof of that. And I mean, it's just not fair. Speaking of the anxious preoccupied, because I think this is a trait the anxious preoccupied has, is they feel so emotionally responsible for people.
So emotionally responsible for people.
And I feel like when you put a child in the middle, and I can attest to this with my own child because I feel like his attachment style is anxious preoccupied. He just feels so emotionally responsible for his dad's well-being and my well-being. And he will do whatever it takes. And now that he just turned 18, now that he's in a relationship, it translates into that relationship. So it's like, here's one thing that JP will do that drives me absolutely bonkers. He'll say he's sorry and he doesn't even know what he's sorry for.
Right. It's fawning.
Yes.
So for the anxious preoccupied, so let's just kind of talk about how it translates into adult relationships. The anxious preoccupied person learned very early on, if I wanted to get the attention of my parents because it's inconsistent, I need to really make sure that I'm pleasing, right? So I'm going to like jump in front of them and show them how pleasing I am because the inconsistency is very hard and I want them to see me. I want them to pay attention to me now while they're around. And one of the ways I can do that and get sort of this positive attention I'm craving is to really be pleasing, to be kind of like a people pleaser.
Yeah.
And so anxious preoccupieds are notorious people pleasers. They're notorious for dropping their own boundaries, apologizing for nothing, because their deepest fear is that of abandonment because the times when their parents were not available to them, the felt experience in the nervous system was abandonment. Right? And it's sort of like, well, what do I have to do to get my parents' attention while they're around? So that's how the not good enough wound develops, which is like, okay, how can I figure out how to be what they need me to be? So anxious, preoccupied people will sort of twist themselves into a pretzel to be what they think someone else needs in order to not be abandoned. Right? And so fearful avoidance is really a fear of betrayal. Fearful avoidance and the fear of betrayal is, I'm going to attach to you, then you're going to show me you're not who I thought I was. Then I'm going to be stuck with you, and I'm going to be really hurt and really angry, but still really wanting to be connected. And that's the fear. The anxious, preoccupied person's like, well, I'm not actually as concerned if you treat me like crap. Just please don't leave me. Don't leave me by myself. Don't leave me alone.
Gosh, this is JP.
Yeah. And so it's very much fundamentally a difference between being hurt and being left. And so anxious preoccupieds, they get so much of their worth and so much of their validation from the idea that someone loves them.
Right. And the toxicity that exists in the relationship is just codependence.
So the definition of codependence is, I'm not okay if you're not okay, right? And the anxious preoccupied feels that to their very deepest core. You have to be okay because if you're not okay, you could leave me. And then I'll be alone. And then that makes me worthless. And that makes me like incapable of regulating my own nervous system. Because another thing about the anxious preoccupied person is that they really lack self-regulation abilities. And they really need and prefer co-regulation. They want someone else to swoop in and soothe their nervous systems for them. Right? That's why abandonment's so scary. Well, then there'll be nobody to soothe me.
Right. And I think they have the biggest, in terms of their own identity, major issues.
Yes, they're very much chameleons.
Yes, because they don't know who they are outside of the people that love them.
Right.
And so I've tried so hard with JP specifically. And, you know, I mean, my fear is that he's going to have to kind of learn it the hard way, right? Like get his heart broke but, you know, I've tried to tell him, you know, you have to have some sense of identity in who you are outside of this person that you love.
Absolutely.
You know, because he's in the midst of his first love. And they're precious, right? They're so precious. They're sweet to each other. But again, the toxicity exists in the codependency. Like they're not like two FAs, right? That are breaking up every other week and then getting back together. No. You know, they're not that level of toxic. But the codependency I see is toxic and scary for a mother to watch.
I mean, some of the things like that you've told me, you can see like an FAAP dynamic a little bit play out.
Yeah, for sure. But he's really dismissive though, which I also think is a trait of the AP. So he'll disassociate really quickly when any type of emotion, like strong, like big emotions come up, right? So he'll kind of, if I'm showing big emotions or anyone around him is showing really big emotions,
it's probably a flight response.
It's
probably not real dissociation. It's probably he's internalizing it and he's not speaking. He's not verbalizing his dysregulation, but he's feeling it deeply on the inside. That's a very strong AP trait, which is if stuff really starts getting out of control, I'm going to go quiet. Because if I say or do something that could lead to abandonment, quiet is like the most neutral space, right? So, but on the inside, their insides are like Jello. They're shaking.
I mean, I've told you a million times you can hug JP and just feel his like
rigidity.
Oh, he's just this ball. He's like a rock
of anxiety.
He is a rock. His body, and he's not he's a little guy, right? But you hug him and you can just feel his nervous system is just so tense.
Which is so interesting because when you've had difficulty, and I think if I had to guess how JP probably developed this, yes, his dad is very dysfunctional, but you really protected him kind of hardcore as much as you could. And so the intermittent reinforcement came when mom is super loving and attentive, attuned to me and protective of me, but then I don't really get it from dad. So I get it from one parent but not another. That is also inconsistent reinforcement, right? When I go to mom, it's met. When I go to dad, the need's not met. So I go to mom, the need's met. I go to dad, the need's not met, right? And I think that and props to you because fearful avoidance is harder to deal with than anxious preoccupied attachment. And so props to you for sheltering him as much as you could from the bad. I mean, I've never heard you say a bad word about your ex in front of him. I've never heard you go down, past history with him of what happened between, you and your ex and his dad. And when his dad was behaving badly, I mean, you did everything you could to not disparage him while also helping him process and protect.
Yeah. I really do
so
try to.
that probably protected him from that
hope
fearful
so.
avoidance.
I hope so. And I still try to walk him through some things, because now he's getting to that age where he really sees it for what it is. And I know I've talked about this too in the past, but he's seeing his dad's behavior and he's like, this doesn't feel right. This doesn't feel good. And now will he stand up to him? I don't think he's quite there yet, but he said
the AP is the least likely to stand up to
he did say
anyone.
something though that we were at dinner last weekend with my sisters, and I don't know, his dad came up, and I think my sister made just a casual joke or something, and JP said, you know what? I was like, he said something like, yeah, my dad, he's complicated, and he was like, I'm just waiting for my window to kick his ass.
Oh, I wouldn't have seen that one coming.
I know, me neither. And I was like, well, again, I was like, you're not going to kick your dad's ass.
Yeah.
But you can't, but at the same time, I'm like, secretly like, well, I can't say I blame him because
that's from years of oppression.
Oh, for sure.
From his dad. Of like, you are not allowed to speak up.
Right.
Right. You're
what
not
I
allowed.
say is right. No other way.
Yeah. And then the idea of like, okay, I'm a people pleaser. I'm not gonna buck on you.
Right.
Fearful avoidant would buck on that.
Yeah.
They would. I bucked on my dad constantly.
Me too. I bucked on my mom too. That is not JP. JP
Yeah.
won't buck for anything.
It's crazy.
I mean, I've looked at him.
It's not crazy. It's an anxious, preoccupied
it's
trait.
an anxious, preoccupied. I've looked at him 3 or 4 times, and I'm like, you realize, like, you're almost 18. Like,
he is 18 now.
I was like, he is. Yes, he turned 18 on Tuesday. I said, you can. It's free will. Our agreed order is null and void.
Yeah.
It no longer
There's
exists.
no more parenting plan.
Right. Like, you can come and go as you want, to a degree,
Sure.
right? In terms of who you stay with. But he'll never buck on his dad.
Yeah, he won't give up the parenting schedule.
He won't.
Mm-hmm. No, because he feels an obligation to please his dad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right? It's anxious, preoccupied.
Which is beautiful.
There's
to a degree. Sweet.
It is sweet, but it's also can be self-abandoning.
Yeah, that's
right?
what I was going to say.
So anxious, preoccupied people are very, very self-abandoning, meaning that they just won't assert their boundaries because when they start to and they see that it could potentially lead to abandonment, it's like, nope.
Yep.
I'm gonna stop right here and I'm gonna fawn.
Too scary.
I'm gonna apologize for even bringing it up in the first place. The AP things that people don't understand about this. One, they hate conflict just as much as the DA does. So AP DAs actually, their relationships kind of go on a long time, and both people are fairly unhappy. But you don't see the volatility. You don't see like the anger and the resentment like you do when there's an FA in the relationship.
Right. Those FAs,
I am not trying to just, hate on the FA because we are both former FAs.
Yeah.
My husband's a former FA. And again, when you earn your security, it's not like every single thing changes perfectly.
No.
You are a heck of a lot better than you were. And then when little traits or patterns pop back up, you catch it and correct it quickly.
Yeah.
And that's really what security is.
Yeah.
But man, anxious, preoccupied people, they don't speak up for themselves.
They really don't.
They won't. They won't come to their partner and say, you know what, this is unacceptable now. Right.
And then, I have a very good friend that is also AP.
Yeah.
And you know who I'm talking about.
I do.
And, she reacts in the same exact way where she won't say anything. She'll go silent. But I can see
killing her on the inside.
I can see what's going on internally.
She's becoming very upset and dysregulated.
And I've even told her at times, just say what you want to say. Say what you want to say. It's okay. This is a safe space.
Yeah.
You can say what you want, and I'm still going to be here. I'm still going to be your friend. I may not agree with you.
Right.
But you can speak your truth with me.
Right.
You can always speak your truth with me.
Right. APs can also be a little bit passive aggressive, not like in the mean low blow way that fearful avoidance will. Like fearful avoidance will toss out like a real below the belt thing, right?
Yeah.
Anxious preoccupieds will be just like the littlest bit passive aggressive because that's the only way they feel like they can safely assert what they really want to say or really feel, like how they really feel. But they're never going to come out and say it directly because that would be too vulnerable.
Yep.
And that's the other point I want to make about the anxious preoccupied is they're actually not vulnerable like they think they are. They think they want this really vulnerable emotional connection, but they don't.
Yeah.
Because they don't choose people that can give it to them. They're inherently not attracted to secure people. They're attracted to the avoidants that give them the intermittent reinforcement that they had in childhood.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
They get addicted to people that give and take away, give and take away, give and take away, because that's what their parents did unknowingly.
Right.
Right? So that's why they're so attracted to the DA. Then you have two people. So in an APDA, which is anxious, preoccupied, dismissive, avoidant dynamic, there's not a lot of conflict.
Right.
There's not.
No.
They're like, well, we don't really fight that much, but also like neither of us feel like we're getting our needs met.
Right.
And I'm like, yeah, because you're both avoiding conflict. You're both avoiding standing up for your needs. The DA is over here not even knowing what their needs are.
Right.
Right. And the AP is over here absolutely knowing what their needs are, but scared to death to voice it.
Yep. Gosh. That sounds almost more miserable. Because I'm
There's a lot of tension.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. The FA in me, I gotta let it blow.
You'd be like, oh hell no.
Yeah, the top has got to blow.
Yeah.
Things have to be said. I cannot keep it.
I cannot hold something
I
back.
might have a threshold. Sometimes I'll hold back or I'll hold back, but then I'm that boiling pot of water that is the FA.
So I can't hold things back, but now I do it in a secure way where I really sit on it and thoughtfully decide how I'm going to bring this up.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm better at picking my battles, but I still lean more towards, no, I'd rather risk a disagreement and work through it than carry resentment.
Yeah.
Because I saw my parents as the most resentful humans towards each other on the face of the earth. I was so resentful in my first marriage, and I refuse to be resentful in this marriage.
Yeah.
So if even a tiny bit of it creeps up, I'm going to consider that something that I want to talk about, air it out, get it fixed, move on from it. But I try to sit back, and instead of doing what F.A. Sarah would have done, which is just snap back, whatever, crappy thing would have come out of my mouth.
Yeah.
I just sit back and I think, how can I approach this with curiosity, with love, with respect, with understanding kind of him and where maybe it's come from, right?
I usually do that when the things have already been said. I did it the other day to Josh.
It's still a catch and correct.
Yeah, but I catch it so much quicker.
And that's what the building of attachment security helps you do. It helps you catch it quicker and quicker and quicker until you start catching it more in the moment.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And being able to adjust and switch courses in the moment when the difficult circumstance is happening between you and your partner.
Yeah. Because I did say something to Josh. Can't remember. I just snapped on him. Because sometimes he'll get a little passive aggressive about certain things that JP doesn't do in the house. It's that strange dynamic that I know a lot of families deal with when you're, a mixed family.
Yes.
And even with us, it's still hard. And Josh doesn't have children of his own. And it's still difficult because it's hard to find your place, right, as a step parent. I've always said step parenting is it's a really, really difficult role to play.
It is.
And, where he came into John Paul's life later, 13, 14, 15, it wasn't as easy for him to really know his place. And so, but he'll do this passive aggressive thing where like he'll see that the garbage needs to be taken out and John Paul hasn't taken the initiative to do it. And he'll get really pissy and like, slam doors and like take the garbage out and huff and puff. And I can't take it.
I can't take passive aggressiveness.
I'm like, just say what you want to say.
Yeah, passive aggressiveness is something that makes me want to blow my top. And my husband was raised with a mom who really parented him through passive aggressiveness. And my husband has a lot of trauma, and humor and sarcasm is a very big defense mechanism for him. But he's also hilarious.
Yeah.
So I don't want him to lose that trait to some degree. But if we ever get in a disagreement, it's because I feel like he's been too passive aggressive
Yeah.
in something that he said. And I'm like, just tell me how you really feel, babe.
Yeah.
I can take it.
Yeah.
It's
well,
okay.
And I should have probably approached it that way with Josh, but I'm like, I can't stand the passive aggressiveness. So just say what you want to say. I said, mainly because I don't want you to resent John Paul.
Right.
Because that's how it's coming off. It's
Right.
coming off like you resent John Paul because I'm like, he's a kid, babe. He's a kid. He's like, yeah, but you're not setting enough boundaries for him. And then it comes back on me. I'm like, that's okay. Blame me. You can blame me because we can sit here and have a conversation. Right. I'm like, but you can also stand, you can say something. You can say something to JP like, hey, bud, like the garbage needs to be taken out. Like, can you grab it? Like, it's that easy. And he's not going to like be like, you're not my dad.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not his style, you know? And I think Josh fears that so badly that, he just chooses the passive aggressive route. But no.
Yeah.
I'll put a stop to that stat.
Yeah. Yeah, I understand. That is the only real battle that my current husband, love you, baby, sort of have. And then I get really weird around my period. I get really weird.
Yeah.
I get so weird. Like 2 days before, he knows.
Yeah.
And he very much like looks at the calendar and doesn't take it personally anymore. Right. I don't know why.
Yeah.
I heard that there's this big correlation between ADHD and PMDD, which is like ADHDers are so much more likely to have a major hormonal imbalance before their menstrual cycle.
Interesting.
And I'm just wondering if maybe that's it.
Yeah.
But I get really weird. Like I definitely have 2 days where I am like, I have to do some apologizing.
I can sense it in my sister, Rachel. Like I always know when Rachel calls me and she starts like, Rachel's always like this buffer where she'll just sit back and kind of let me talk and vent. Like it's always, our dynamic has always been that way. But like once a month, she'll call me and she's just like on this rampage. And I'm like,
That's
are
me.
you about to start your period?
Yeah. Donald will go, it's okay, baby. Your period will come tomorrow and you'll feel a lot better. And I'm like, no. And then I'll look at the calendar and I'll be like, maybe. And then without fail, the next day.
Yeah.
The next day.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm that hypervigilant, babe. I know when it's going to happen.
Yeah, that's good.
But
really
I think the anxious, preoccupied person, the only way that they know how to insert themselves just a little bit is through passive aggressiveness because they can't, they're too scared. They're too anxious to be direct.
Right. Gosh, I hate that for JP.
I know.
Honestly, I hate it for my friend too because I've seen the dynamic without telling who she is, of course, but I've seen the dynamic kind of play out in her current relationship. And I think they have a good relationship for the most part, but she has a difficult time, which I've tried, when she confides in me, I've tried to tell her, you got to just say what you feel here. You got to be able to set your boundaries and set them firmly and securely and confidently and compassionately. And not be afraid to do that.
That's right.
Because it's the only way that you can grow and communicate. Like she's just not communicating enough. And then again, she sits back and she feels like her needs aren't being met. And I think if John Paul, going back to him, I think that he would probably, just as an example, if he were emotionally mature enough, he's just in the first relationship of his life.
Right.
He's not recognizing any of this.
Yeah.
None of it.
Well, you're going to be a great guide for him as he gets older and confides more in you about certain struggles, right? Because teenagers don't want to talk to their parents.
No.
About their
Especially about their relationship.
No, absolutely not. But he might more later in life. And again, nobody's perfectly attachment secure.
No.
Like Josh is probably the most secure person that I know.
But he still falters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nobody's 100% secure. It's just like, what do they do like 85% of the time? Right? Like, what are they like 85% of the time?
Yeah.
That's a solid B. And that's secure.
Yep.
It is.
Yep.
Because the people that I work with are D's and F's in terms of security. Most of them, not all of them. I'm not going to say all of my clients are D's and F's.
Yeah.
In terms of like, they're great. If an A is perfectly secure and an F is not secure at all.
Right.
Most of them are. And there's a selection bias there because they're in the most pain, therefore that's why they reach out.
Sure.
Right. So I'm not putting any of my clients down by any means. I'm just saying they do seek me out because they realize I had really disruptive childhoods or I have this really difficult relationship in my life and I can't reconcile it and I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
Right. And then they don't recognize how insecure that they were because nobody has ever taught them anything different.
Right.
So again, the majority of people don't know what they don't know.
Yep.
If that makes sense.
No, it makes perfect sense.
Right.
And there was a lot I didn't even know, until I started, working with you.
Yeah.
We had been friends forever.
Yeah.
I mean, we'd been friends for 5-6 years even before that. Right. But I tell people this on sales calls all the time. I'm like, I can sit in on a session or be like in Dr. Hensley's office when maybe a group session's going on. And I'm like, I still learn things every single time, and I've been around her for 7 years now. And, I've been almost doing this. It'll be a year in February, and I coached for 3 to 4 months. And so I'm like, I still learn these little tidbits of information each time because, again, it's like you don't know what you don't know.
You don't know what you don't know. Yeah, that's exactly right. And so, but the great news about my clients is they very quickly come up to like B's, which is great. They very quickly are able to.
That's why you have a successful business.
To come up, they're just like, oh, I didn't know how to do things different.
Yeah.
And it's not what to do differently. They come to me knowing what they should be doing.
Right.
They don't know how to do it. Right? Like, no, I don't want to get super mad and yell at my husband.
Yeah.
But I don't know how to not do that.
Yeah.
It happens so quick. Yeah. I blow my top so quick. What do I do? Right? Or I don't know how to shut down and like go talk to my wife. I'm terrified.
Right.
I don't want to deal with it. It feels like one of my clients said it feels like walking into a moving chainsaw to have to go back to his FA wife being a DA after a conflict. Like, I'm going to get my head chopped off. I don't want to do that. I'm going to avoid it.
Yeah.
Right? And
for the anxious preoccupied, I think that they just become so dysregulated in their nervous system.
So dysregulated.
The idea of going and having any type of conflict without being able to disassociate maybe like the DA is just
it's horrible because they're stuck in they're pretty much stuck in flee and fawn.
I feel like
I either got to internalize it or I got to apologize.
And I'm not putting APs down when I say that. I say that with like true empathy. Like, I feel like it would be the most, for me, maybe it's the FA in me, but I feel like it would be the most torturous.
Yeah.
Because holding all that stuff in
constantly
just feels so dysregulating.
And the people pleasing is extremely dysregulating because you're tap dancing around meeting other people's needs without meeting any of your own. Yeah. So what does your nervous system think about that? Right? It doesn't like that.
It ain't happy.
It's not happy. But FAs, I mean, every single type of attachment has very painful issues. I mean, even again, nobody's 100% secure. Everybody goes through pain. It's just that some of us go through more pain. Like, I was an F in terms of an FA. I was an F-.
It was bad there for us. It was crazy.
You give me credibility because you're like, I saw you before you did your healing work and after you did your healing work.
Take my word for it, folks. I saw it firsthand.
And I had so much knowledge.
I know, you did.
I knew better.
Yeah.
And I was still like, but can I make it work with this extremely severe DA? And Raina's like, no. Again, no.
You just got to cut it clean.
And I'm like, but I can change him.
Yeah. And I didn't even know, I don't think I knew much about attachment then. I don't think I knew anything at all other than maybe some of the stuff that you had told me. I just knew that deep down, you were extremely unhappy. I saw it.
Unhappy. Because I was and here's the thing. This was not a bad person.
No, he's a good person.
Good person.
Yeah, I know him.
Good morals, good character, hardworking.
Person. Yeah.
But he lacked so much capacity for intimacy. And I look at my marriage with Donald and I'm like, that's real intimacy.
Yeah.
Like Donald and I are so connected that we steal energy from each other. Like, if he comes in and he's a little bit sick, like there's like a superpower that makes me stronger so that I can take care of him and vice versa.
Yeah.
Or if he's like a little bit stressed, like I feel like FAs just have this hyper empathy, right? They have the hyper empathy, which can become dysfunctional because it dysregulates them.
Yeah.
So it's like we've got all our own emotions, plus we feel the emotions of everyone else.
All right.
And so when I feel like just a little bit of that stress or vice versa with him, then we're both like a little stressed and we're both like, okay, what are we going to do?
Yeah.
What are we going to do? Right? Like,
right. So speaking back to the anxious preoccupied, I know you don't see him a lot in your practice.
I don't.
But when you
which
do,
is interesting.
When you do, like, and this might be a silly question because it might be a blanketed response. But what are some of the coaching tactics that you use with the AP?
Well, we have to be able, there are some that are across the board.
Right.
Like taking control of your thoughts, learning metacognitive skills, learning healthy emotional processing paired with neuroregulation is the hallmark of my coaching program. But there's nuances for each attachment. And boundary setting is the thing that we have to work on with the AP because they have Zippo boundaries.
Yep.
And being able to speak up and communicate those boundaries and then holding those boundaries. Again, not allowing the fear of abandonment to override what you need in a relationship, right? Yeah. So anxious, preoccupied people, again, are constantly self-abandoning when abandonment is actually their biggest fear.
Yeah.
Right?
I know. It's so ironic.
It is. That's how the subconscious works, man. And I think I don't see as many of them because they don't want to admit that they need help. They're so driven by, but I can change to make things better.
Yeah.
I can do the dance. I can twist myself into the pretzel. So I haven't tried hard enough.
I've got a strong sense of pride.
Very strong sense of pride. Yeah. Around being the fixer.
Right. Yeah.
Right? I can do the special dance to please everyone. Just give me another chance to do the special dance or to twist myself into that pretzel. And it's very unfortunate.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you can't just do the dance.
No.
You're still going to face problems, even being the extreme people pleaser. And again, how about that effect on their nervous system of constantly setting, or I should say, giving up your boundaries and self-abandoning.
Yeah.
But, I think the I'm not good enough wound implies you could be better.
Yeah. Yeah.
Implies, well, you could try harder.
Right.
If I'm not good enough, well, give me another chance.
Right.
I'll figure out how to be good enough.
It's not like the DA who has the defectiveness wound.
Right, which is a give up, throw your hands up in the air, there's nothing that can be done with me type of feeling.
Right.
Right. This is a hopeless situation type of feeling. The AP is like the Energizer bunny, ever motivated to do better, to try to fix the problem. If I can fix me, I can fix us, is sort of the AP motto.
Yeah.
And so I think that's why they don't reach out as much.
Yeah.
Because they're convinced that they can do it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I can fix him.
Yeah.
Or I can fix her.
That's JP too. I don't know if I see any FA qualities in him, honestly. Which is surprising because he did have some, big T traumas growing up. And so, that leads me to another question, because this question gets asked a lot, I think, in your messages. Can you shift? Like, can someone be like an anxious preoccupied, and if they had big T traumas, they get into adult relationships and they're more fearful avoidant?
Yeah. So what I say is like attachment absolutely can shift and change, but not that much.
Yeah.
Right? We're never going to have an AP turn into a DA.
Yeah.
Right? We can have an FA that maybe has been in so many narcissistic relationships that they're kind of pushed so far into their avoidance that the fear of connection sort of starts to outweigh their need for it.
Yeah.
And so at their core, their betrayal wound is still kind of in the driver's seat, which would technically really make them FA. But their behavior is so dismissive.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
It's just so dismissive because the fears of intimacy have gotten so big.
I experienced that for a little bit.
Yes, you did. I remember your avoidant period.
Yeah.
You were like, I don't want to talk to anybody. I don't want to go on any dates. I don't care. Guys were like sending
don't
you
like
flowers,
anyone.
DMing the hell out of you, asking you on all these dates. And you were like, I don't think so.
I don't like
and I'm like, what's
anyone.
wrong with him? He's good looking. He seems nice. He's got a decent job. He seems like he might be an okay person. And you're like, no. I just like being at home.
Yeah, I
And
just
I
want
was
to be
like, okay.
alone.
You're like, I
Yeah.
just want to be alone. I just don't think I want to date.
Yeah.
And
It's
I was
good
like,
for me.
yeah, it was
time.
good because I think you did a lot of healing work in that phase.
I think so. I do think so. It was very good for me. I've spent at certain times, certain seasons in my life, I spent, long periods of sabbatical from dating. And it was always good for me.
Best thing I ever did.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's when I did my healing work. too.
Sabbaticals from dating. Again, just bringing that back to the AP. It's not something that they are very good at.
No. The AP is, if there's a breakup,
They're a love addict.
they are on the dating apps that night.
Yeah.
That night.
Yeah.
Because it's like, no, my worth comes from someone loving me, comes from me being in a relationship.
Yeah.
So that's why they can't let bad relationships go. And then if it does, like they absolutely reach the breaking point, or the DA leaves them, or whoever leaves them, right? Because they're so needy, pushy, whatever. then they're just like right on that dating
Yeah.
app or
Yeah.
right on like who's going to be with me next
Yeah.
because I can't be alone.
And that is why they're called the love
The
addicts.
love addict. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
aloneness to them is like death.
Mm-hmm.
It just means they're worthless
Yeah.
to them.
That's so sad.
It is.
We love you, APs. We
We
really do. You
do.
guys are so precious.
And their superpower is their warmth and their kindness.
Mm-hmm.
They're
Yeah.
very warm, very kind, very
Yeah.
loving, very
Yeah.
generous people.
Yep. Yep. I
And
can
that is
attest
their
to that
superpower.
with my son, for sure. So if you are anxious, preoccupied, and you are looking for intervention, please go visit Dr. Hensley's website.
Yeah, I'd like to see more of them because don't think you can do the dance forever.
God, it's exhausting. The dance is exhausting.
Their nervous systems are exhausted.
Mm-hmm. I'm telling you, I hug my son next time you see him.
Isn't it interesting? And I don't know if that's related to his attachment or just some of the trauma itself.
Mm-hmm.
When you have trauma, like the fascia of your muscles, like remember.
Mm-hmm.
The Body Keeps Score is such a great book. I
Yeah.
feel like everybody should read it.
Yeah. That is a great book. For those looking for a good book recommendation, The Body Keeps Score is a great book.
Yeah, about how trauma lasts in the body.
I read it as well because you told me to read it. That was years ago. It's a tough one, though.
Yeah,
just so
it makes you go, oh.
It's a tough one.
But we can do a lot of somatic work for that. There's a lot of great somatic work. There's something called TRE, which is certain exercises for trauma release. There's EMDR. There's like just somatic nervous system processing work, which is something that I teach.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of hope for us who have a lot of stored trauma. We do need to thank our sponsor.
Yes.
Cozy Earth.
Mm-hmm.
Holler.
Holler, Cozy Earth.
Cozy Earth, you sent me pajamas and my husband some pajamas.
Mm-hmm.
He does not want to take them off.
He's
amazing. Like, I need to wash these every day, and this is what I'm living in now. And I'm like, okay, let me order you a few more pairs.
Yeah.
And because your attachment to them is pretty big.
Yeah.
They are so freaking soft.
She actually sent me a picture, just so you know, this Cozy Earth. Maybe you should send it to Cozy Earth.
I think I should.
But she sent me a picture, I guess it was over the weekend.
Of us in our Cozy Earth
She was like,
PJs.
we haven't gotten out of our Cozy Earth PJs in 48 hours. I'm like, girl, I know. They are good. They are so good. Josh and I love ours too. And so thank you, Cozy Earth, for being a sponsor of our podcast. And thank you for our PJs.
And our sheets.
And our sheets. Both are made of viscous bamboo.
Yes. So they're incredibly, incredibly soft. But like this like cool soft, not like a rough flannelly material.
No.
It's very sleek, very soft, but also just really
feels good on the skin.
It feels so good on the skin, and it kind of adapts to your temperature, which I think is really wonderful.
Which has been very helpful for me right now because my air conditioning's broken. Aww. Even though it's November in Kentucky, but it's like it's been warm.
It has been warm.
It's been so warm. It was like 78 degrees in my house the other day, and I'm like, I'm just trying to like push through, and then I'm like, I don't know, it's supposed to be in the 70s next week too. I'm like, they're going to have to come out here and fix this. But anyway, thankfully at night, I haven't been sweating as much because of my Cozy Earth sheets.
Yeah.
And so if you have trouble with temperature control, or if you just want a nice cozy pair of PJs for the holidays, they've got matchy PJs, go visit them at cozyearth.com and mention promo code LOVEDOC for 40% off.
Thank you, Cozy Earth.
Yes. Oh, and post-purchase survey will get you a free pair of socks too.
Cool.
So thank you, Cozy Earth. And again, if you have enjoyed this content and you are looking for intervention and looking for help with attraction and your attachment style, please, even if you are an anxious preoccupied, we see you and we love you.
We do.
Yes, please go visit Dr. Hensley and all her services at thedatingdecoder.com. Check them all out there. Especially, listen, guys, it's a better time than ever to start working on yourself.
Get it done before the holidays.
Yes.
Don't be miserable during the holidays because holidays, whenever you have outside tension, it's always going to decrease your self-regulatory abilities, which is the hallmark of security. And so the holidays are stressful.
Yes.
Let's just pretend for a second that we're all adults and we're all going to admit the truth. Christmas is stressful.
It is. I'll admit it. I've been admitting that for years.
It's stressful.
It is.
And even Thanksgiving, just being around family, like work on your attachment, work on your relationship so you have the skills to really enjoy the holidays.
Yeah, and then go into the new year kind of refreshed and renewed, which is what we should all do.
Exactly.
So again, if you're loving this content, leave us a review, like, subscribe, follow. We've got so much more to come, and we are just so thankful for our listeners. We love you guys.
We do.
Yes, we love you so much. And until next time, peace, love, and perspective.